So his eyes alone make up nearly a fifth of his entire model. Kinda creepy. Welcome back to How Many Tries, a content free time show where we look at 3D models in video games. In light of the recent news of the Simpsons Movie 2 coming out in 2027, I thought it might be fun to look at a Simpsons model. And since Homer won the poll over Bart, we're going to take a look at almost every single Homer Simpson model from The Simpsons. Starting with a bit of an Easter egg. So I believe the very first 3D Simpsons game was The Simpsons Bowling, released for arcades in the year 2000, though the first home console 3D Simpsons game was The Simpsons Wrestling, released for the PlayStation 1 a year later in 2001. And although the only model ripped straight from that game that I could find is Maggie Simpson for some reason, thanks to Master Pengo on the Models Resource website, we have this model from the Star Wars Episode 1 The Phantom Menace PC video game, which was actually released 2 years before The Simpsons Wrestling in 1999, made by the same developers, Big Ape Productions. They must have been working on these two games simultaneously, and at least during development left this model of Homer Simpson in the game, which is pretty funny, but I think it gives us a pretty good starting point. So I'd say this looks pretty similar to the model from The Simpsons Bowling. His skin's maybe a bit darker, a bit oranger, especially his beard or whatever around his mouth here. Quite a bit darker, has more of that early Simpsons vibe to it. And obviously he's in his more traditional outfit, the white collared shirt and the blue pants, rather than this bowling outfit. It might have been kind of fun to see him in like a luchador outfit or something, but seeing as though this was one of the very first 3D Simpsons games, I can see why they went with the more traditional outfit. Compared to the box art for The Simpsons Wrestling, I'd say this is a pretty good adaptation. The box art looks like it was drawn by the same people who do the art for the show. I'd say it looks nearly identical to it. It probably was drawn by one of the artists from the show, if I had to take a guess. Again, the main difference I'm seeing is this area around his mouth here. It looks a lot more like how it was colored in earlier episodes of The Simpsons. If I had any complaints with this first model, I'd say that maybe his lips are puckered just a bit too much. I don't really like the way this is just kind of a straight up triangle. It makes him look like he has a bird beak or something. And his eyes also might be just a bit too bulgy, perhaps. I don't know, they're pretty bulgy on the cover art for the game too. Yeah, with the textures turned off, that bird beak is particularly noticeable, I would say. I'm not 100% certain if this is the exact model that they used in The Simpsons Wrestling. They very likely did improve it a bit after working on the Phantom Menace game, but at least this leftover model that we're looking at is 618 tries. Before moving on to the next model, I'd like to take a minute to thank today's sponsor, BenQ. The BenQ B Creatus GR10 HDMI 2.1 Steam Deck dock. This dock lets you experience your games the way they're meant to be seen, with 4K HDR visuals up to 120Hz, and even 8K at 60Hz support. It's powered by USB 4 technology with 40 gigabits per second bandwidth, 100 watt charging, and a blazing fast 2.5 gigabit Ethernet port for smooth downloads and stable online play. It's got a compact magnetic folding design, works great with the Steam Deck ROG Ally, or even your laptop, and it's just built better than the cheap docks out there. So if you want to level up your handheld setup, check out the B Creatus GR10 Steam Deck dock. You can grab one using my Amazon affiliate link down below to support the channel. Finally, a dock that makes your Steam Deck feel like a real gaming rig. Next we have The Simpsons Road Rage, surprisingly released just a few months after The Simpsons Wrestling in 2001. Pretty big improvement here since we went from the PlayStation 1 to the GameCube, Xbox, and PS2 era of video games. You can see they fixed the bird beak. The proportions still look pretty good. The coloring's a lot better. His mouth doesn't have that dark orangey color to it anymore. His pants are a lot lighter. His shoes are actually a bit too light, in my opinion. In the show, they're a lot more black, like pitch black, I think. But you can see even with flat coloring turned on here, they're pretty gray. The eyes aren't quite as bulgy as they were in The Simpsons Wrestling, but they still have a good amount of bulge to them. The hair's a lot thinner, looks a lot more like the pencil lines from the show. I do sort of miss the outline on his collar. It's kind of hard to see now because it just blends in with the rest of his shirt, but other than that, pretty solid model. Oh my gosh, look at how many polygons are in his eyes. Just his eyes have almost 1,000 triangles. The entirety of the model is 4,898 tries. So his eyes alone make up nearly a fifth of his entire model as far as polygon count goes. Kinda creepy. So that's Homer Simpson when you're playing as him in the Simpsons Road Rage as a driver. When you pick him up as a passenger, he has a slightly different model. Looks like it has slightly less polygons. I'm sure they did that for performance reasons. He also has a slightly more clueless look on his face. I think it's because he doesn't have any teeth in this one. They only gave him teeth when he's a driver. He also doesn't have his fat folds sticking out of his pants here like he does as a driver. And his eyes are significantly less detailed. While that driver model was almost 5,000 tries, this model is way less. 1,462 tries. Next we have the Simpsons Skateboarding, released a year later in 2002. I'd never heard of this game. I didn't know there was a 3D Simpsons skateboarding game, but now that I do, I kind of want to try it. Though maybe not based on the model. It looks like a pretty significant step down from Road Rage. It just looks a lot more off-model compared to how he's supposed to look in the show. You can see his arms are way more skinny. They don't bulge out like they did in Road Rage. They just look like straight pipes here. His shirt is just like totally rectangular at the sleeves. Very little shape to them. Look at how thin his upper arms are. You can't have a guy this big with arms this small. I guess the rest of him looks okay though. The head looks fine. The nose might be a bit too small. The legs are maybe a bit too thin. I think the shoes are too small too. He just has really weird sort of uncanny proportions. Looks like some kind of alien. 3,166 tries. Next we have everyone's favorite Simpsons game, the Simpsons Hit and Run, released another year later in 2003. We'll get to the final release in a second, but I just wanted to take a minute to quickly look at this model from the beta version of the game. You can see again, they gave him this darker early Simpsons look to his beard again in the beta. Not sure exactly why. It must be kind of difficult to get that color exactly right, I guess. Other than that, this is a pretty standard looking Homer. Doesn't look quite as good as that playable model from Road Rage. He's definitely got some blockiness to him. His shirt is like directly attached to his pants. There's no break there. And his shoes don't have a heel on them. They're just completely flat. And nothing inside of his mouth here either. This Hit and Run beta model is 1,516 tries. Now moving on to the full game. This model looks a lot better. They got the mouth right, the face looks good, the hair looks good. Still nothing inside of his mouth though. No teeth or anything. He does maybe look a tad bit concerned, the way his eyebrows are protruding like this. But I guess that's fine. His shirt is sticking out a bit now, though he doesn't have the fat folds that he had from The Simpsons Road Rage. They fixed the modeled part of his shoes. They have the heel now, but they're still kind of gray instead of black. But overall, pretty good looking model. 1,386 tries. We got one more hit and run model here. This is from the main menu where Homer can be seen sleeping on the couch. It's a little bit more detailed compared to the playable model from the game, but really I think the only difference is the polygon count and maybe the lighting or the texture work on his skin here. He looks a bit more realistic, maybe, kind of like a clay model on the main menu, as opposed to this more cartoony flat yellow in-game. Definitely the same basic shape though. While the playable model was about 1,400 tries, this one from the main menu is 1,558 tries. And the last four models we're looking at today are all from the Simpsons Game, the sort of kind of but not really movie tie-in game from 2007. First up we got the one from the Nintendo Wii version of the game, which looks pretty similar to the last few models, the most noticeable difference being these teeth. He looks very concerned, like his teeth are chattering. Oh, and they actually drew the little squiggle inside of his ear for this model. Looks like they've left that out in basically all of the previous models. So I guess just that detail alone makes it look slightly more like the TV show. This Nintendo Wii Simpsons Game model is 3,082 tries. These next two are both from the high-definition PlayStation 3 version of the game, though it looks like they gave him a low poly model and a high polygon count model. Usually games do this. Either when the camera is far away, they swap out the high poly model for the low poly one to save on memory, or sometimes they'll use the low poly one for certain mini games or something. The interesting thing about these two models is it doesn't seem like it would save on that much memory, because when you compare the two, the low poly one is 10,307 tries. That is a lot of polygons for a low poly model. And the high poly one is like just 600 triangles more. more, 10,971 tries. So it's like, why did they even bother making two different models when they're nearly identical? I can't even tell the difference between the two, really. Even with the textures turned off, they look pretty much the same. The most obvious difference in the wireframe is this little pivoting triangle thing in the center of his body here. It's a lot taller in the higher polygon count model. So yeah, not exactly sure what's going on here. And the sleeves look like they're more detailed in the low poly model. I don't know, maybe these weren't ripped correctly? Maybe I didn't import them correctly? If someone watching this knows what's going on here, please feel free to let us know in the comments. I'd be happy to hear about it. And lastly, we have the quote-unquote 8-bit model from the game. Are there any actual 8-bit Simpsons video games? I know there were a lot of 16-bit and 32-bit ones. This looks fine, I guess. Pretty silly, pretty funny, nice little gag. What's especially funny to me is how many polygons this is for something that's supposed to be 8-bit. Even though, yeah, I know it's just supposed to be a gag. This model is 2,038 tries. That's more than basically every single model individually prior to the Simpsons game. So there's all the Homers. If I had to pick a personal favorite, I think I'm gonna go with this original driver model from the Simpsons Road Rage. I just kind of like the way his belly folds come out above his pants here. But what's your favorite? Let me know in the comments. As always, let me know who you'd like to see one of these videos on next. If you want a shout out at the end of each video, maybe consider joining the Patreon or as a member here on YouTube. We just have one member on YouTube at the moment, so big shout out to Jay Lisa. Thank you so much for becoming a member. And feel free to subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Thanks for watching.